Okay, so just to get started then, my name is Guy Grieve. I am a sales engineer in the UK and I. I've been working for LogPoint with the product for maybe just over a year now. So what this is basically to do is to give you a quick in-depth guide to LogPoint in an hour essentially. So just to give you a background on the company, to start with, we started off originally in 2009 with LogPoint 3. That was after we did a big U-turn on what we wanted to do, and we decided that we were going to do SIM instead of what essentially we're doing, which was essentially ethical hacking. So we started off, we had a SQL backend, etc. Then we decided we wanted to revamp the product and go SQL-less. So we did a complete shift in 2010 to a non-SQL technology at the same time as hiring our CTO, Peter Melson. Fast forwarding on, we moved into 2012. We received our first initial round investment and released LogPoint version 5, where we class that as the big data platform, where we're able to deal with the large amounts of volume coming in, etc. 2013, we shifted into a partner-centric model, so we do not deal directly with customers. Everything is through a partner, whether it be a preferred partner of your choice, or if you currently don't have one, we can help you find one. And then 2014 is when we expanded into the UK and German markets, and we started around there with about 80 customers. Following on from that, in 2015, we achieved our EL3 Plus certification. This was helped by Boeing. They sponsored us through the requirements, and it just essentially means our software, the way that we develop, the way that we operate as a company, is scrutinized down to the last letter. And yeah, we achieved that at the same year as opening in France. 2016, we launched our MSSSP offering, as well as we hit our 300 plus customers. And then in 2017, we did see the launch of LogPoint version 6. And it's also worth noting in 2017 is when we achieved the Gartner Peer Insight Customer Choice Awards as well. So when we move on to look at ourselves on the European map and essentially EMEA, we can see that in the Nordics, we have a huge market share. It's where our HQ is based. It's where we started off. And of course, we've moved into the DACH region, as well as South EMEA, Benelux, and the UK. You can see all the different types of sales offices that we have lurking around the globe as well. So we've currently got Copenhagen, Munich, Paris, London, and Stockholm. We are expanding at an incredible rate as well, so it wouldn't be surprising the next time you see one of these LogPoint short demos or speak to us later on, we have another office popped up somewhere else. So as I mentioned earlier, we are EL3 Plus certified. We believe we are providing high quality security in our solution. So everything with our, the way the security updates are provided to the product are done by ourselves. We control that. We've followed some strict process requirements by NATO to develop the software, and it just gives that bit of any of our security conscious customers, gives them a bit of better night's sleep knowing that the software has been developed to a high caliber. So when we look at LogPoint in a glance, what do we find that we're dealing with? So the first thing is enterprise data is growing rapidly. It's hard to deal with all the data. It's, to have them all in separate solutions as well, especially when you're trying to find the cause of an issue, it can be quite tiring and it's quite hard and difficult. So that usually comes down to three main ideas. So we've got the security side of things. How do you know if if your system is secure? It's all well thinking, yeah, my firewall's updated, but we still need to know, has that vendor missed anything off? Or I think I've got all my servers patched up, but maybe there's still some suspicious things going on. Compliance, we can definitely help with some compliance, which we'll show around. And essentially, do you actually know that your sensitive data is being handled in a compliant way? Do you know if someone in finance has started sending emails with any salaries on or anything like that? And of course, we can also help with dealing with IT operations, seeing what is in use, heavy use, if something's not exactly being used to its correct standard, anything like that. So we can actually, when we take in all of these logs, we can have LogPoint acting as a surveillance camera, essentially. We can look at absolutely everything coming in, and we'll see in just a moment about how we take the data in and how we can enrich it, etc., and give you a bit more detail on that. So when we just take this in, as I mentioned, we have some panes. That's what they are, essentially. So we have the security, compliance, and the IT operations. What we can actually do is look at bringing those panes, putting them all into LogPoint, and giving you a single pane of glass, some streamlined reporting, some efficient incident response, visual representation and context of logs, security overview with threat intelligence and enrichment. If we were to look at some of the use cases that we have, so for compliance, we have some built in reporting out of the box. So anything like ISO 27001, GDPR, these are all dashboards that have been developed to help you have an idea on what is actually happening in the network. We can detect and respond to users accessing unusual numbers of records. So maybe all of a sudden you see an influx of user A who has started accessing every single finance document in the world. It's out of the ordinary. Let's pick up on that and alert ourselves so we can actually deal with the issue before it actually becomes, media broadcast issues. We've got some things such as detecting sudden changes to permissions, indicating unauthorized access. So it's great to actually see if someone has all of a sudden enabled a disabled account and then starts moving them into the global domain admin account. On the security side of things, this is where we can detect advanced persistent threats. We can start rapidly responding to ransomware. So we can use file integrity monitoring to start to see what's happening with your files on your shares, etc. And we can also enrich with our threat intelligence module to bring in information about the IPs that you guys are visiting on the network. Is this a Tor access node? Is it a command and control botnet node? Anything like that we can start picking up on, as well as we can start detecting and eliminating the risk of CEO fraud, because we can start detecting if someone is maybe spoofing an email address, etc. And finally, on the IT operations side, we can increase the service desk response rate, because we can give the access information to the first line support a lot easier, a lot quicker than you would in traditional methods. So anything such as a simple request of why is my account locked out, this is something that first line can easily handle themselves using LogPoint. We can also do simple things such as calculating and monitoring the costs of printouts, something if you don't have something in place already, very valuable. You can start detecting who is maybe printing out the most. We can start seeing which printer they're using the most, etc. All these are little things that we can build a picture on. So when we look at it, what drives a SIEM market? So SAP security. So many customers actually have SAP installed on the network. We can actually become a big aid with the security side of things, checking about audit logs, who's doing what, who's changing which records, etc. We also have business intelligence as well, safeguarding for anyone coming in from the education sector. Have a look at what people are searching for, the Google searches, etc. What sort of content they're actually viewing on the network. GDPR and compliance is also a big one for that, and just an overall good overview of the network, security breaches, etc. Principles. So we use one common taxonomy. It makes it incredibly easy to search for the data across the wide network. And you'll see that when we get into the demo. It essentially means that what we can do with one search, we can search across a multi-vendor environment. So maybe you have a Cisco firewall and you also have a Palo Alto firewall. With one search, you can search both of these devices. We can store the information securely and efficiently, so we can actually encrypt and compress on the fly. So as the logs are coming in, we just compress them down, save you storage, and then of course we can encrypt on top. And due to the role-based access that we have built into LogPoint, we have a way of letting you have secure access to these logs. We can even do really cool things, such as our universal search query, in which you can force a search on top of a user. So we could actually say, don't show us any information about directors. So you can give that to someone, maybe he's on a first line support session, who maybe you want to hide the CEO logs from them, etc. So when we look at the principles, we are bringing all these devices into one single environment. We operate on a NoSQL database, as I mentioned. We find it resolves a lot of speed issues compared to some other people who may decide to use a SQL database. And it can also save on some costs with licensing, because we're not needing to go out to Microsoft and say, can we have a nice, lovely SQL license? LogPoint enrichment is where we are heavily focusing our development right now. And this is where we can actually start giving you a bit more context to your logs. So you can bring in from the usual sources, your databases, your firewalls, anything like that. Even more like door locks, you can get some valuable information about that. And we bring it in, and then we can start enriching it with Active Directory. So maybe your door locks don't have the Active Directory user on. Let's enrich it with Active Directory and say this is their username, as well as we can start applying threat intelligence to maybe some sort of IPs coming through the system, so anything coming from firewalls and whatnot. Once we've got the enrichment, that of course comes through LogPoint, and as I said, gives you that extra context. Our architecture is incredibly flexible. So we have three main parts of the software architecture. We have the collector, the backend, and the searching of LogPoint. Now we can decide to have an all-in-one solution. LogPoint can be installed in many ways. It can go on a virtual environment, hardware, or even in Azure. However, if you have maybe a multinational setup, or you just have rather many offices around the UK, etc., we can actually start splitting this up. So we can actually say, yep, place a collector, which is only going to collect the logs and forward them on to your main system and your main deployment in the head office. That is absolutely fine. We can start adding extra search heads in places. So members of staff are able to search the logs, but they don't need any storage on site to start looking at, storing the logs there. This is all possible with our flexible architecture. So with that, I'm going to go into a demonstration. So hopefully you guys can still see my screen here. I'll just double check that it's there. Yep. So this is the LogPoint dashboard. This is where we can actually get some visual representation of the logs, see what is happening with all the widgets that are actually listed there. And you can see this is just one that's been predefined for us. This would be readily available out of the box. It's just some information with using our threat intelligence module, where we're going to enrich the data, give a bit more information, so we can actually see what sort of things are coming in, any IOCs coming in, where are they, what is our network talking to, VPN servers, Tor exit nodes, anything like that, or a spyware reporting server. So you can see there are many ways to actually give you some visual representation of the logs. So we can see pie charts, time charts, etc., bar graphs, and we also have gauges, etc. So if we have a look at some mail incidents, and of course, if it's not to the right resolution, we can just go ahead and change that. And we can start seeing some more information about what's coming in, and other people accessing users' mailboxes, who's the top 10 senders of a usual amount of outbound email, and of course some email statistics on that as well. We have some AD references as well. So if we just go ahead and click the auto range there again, to catch us up itself. Oh, I think I may have done that a bit too quick. There we go. So what we can see here is simple things such as top 10 account logouts. A great way for starting to see who is maybe doing some odd things and they're being locked out constantly. So we can clamp down on that and try and find the cause of that. We can see some critical users created. So maybe is there something that we want to keep an eye on, and of course some users' accounts that were deleted, login attempts from disabled accounts, etc. And like I said, if there's any accounts that have been maybe promoted to domain admin, etc., we can detect this. As I mentioned, we can look at printouts, and we have a gauge there, so we can actually configure some thresholds there and say, yeah, once it reaches, X amount, turn it to an amber, and then once it passes another threshold, we want it to flash red, etc. So we can see it on, if we have maybe some monitor on the wall, it's a quick glance at it, and we can see there is an issue that we need to look at. We can also, for example, if I just jump in here, we can actually start drilling down in the information. So if we are interested in the logs that we've seen, so we can see a tracker here, we can actually jump straight to those logs that have brought that forward, and we can actually see the information from that when we jump to it. So I'm just going to jump in. It seems to be running a bit slow today. That's my Wi-Fi. There we are. So we're just waiting for these results to come back. I'm wondering if there's maybe a few too many people on the demo system today. It's always the way. Yeah, so we'll just go and have a quick glance through the logs anyway that have came through recently. So what we can actually see at the bottom here in the plain text essentially is the raw log. Now this is what is actually being forwarded to our system from a firewall, AD, door locks, anything like that. And as you can see, that it's not really pretty to start investigating an issue with. It would take an awful lot of control F, next, etc. What we have above it is our normalized log. So it's actually going to have a label at the top. So it's going to state what it is. And then we can actually say, yeah, this is something to do with the connection or denied packet or denied web request, anything like that. We will know and automatically stamp that on the top. And then we have our key value pairs underneath. So we have source address equals, destination address equals, and the target user, etc. So as I mentioned, we have a single taxonomy. So no matter where the source is coming from for a firewall, for example, it's always going to be known as source underscore address. Makes it incredibly simple for searching across multiple vendor firewalls or multiple vendor network or anything like that. So one search gets you multiple results rather than having to jump to each individual firewall to start doing a bit of a trace on an issue. We can as well start building from this as well. So we can say, yeah, we want to see the top 10 searches, source addresses, sorry. And this could be the same for, we could do that on the user, we could do it on the port, the application being used, anything you like, and we can start building up from that. We can also just start clicking through, and then we can see each individual one, or if we maybe go back and have a look at something else, we can say, yeah, let's jump into maybe the specific LogPoint collector, or what type it came through, the device name, etc. We can do that. On the reporting side, so we have some in the inbox here, but just to give you an idea, we have some templates already there for you. So we have things such as for the firewall, we have ISO reports, Active Directory reports, etc. Some GPG13, which is essentially Cyber Essentials now. And then we also, in the vendor report side of things, have some more just Windows admin or ISO reports, etc. already brought in from here. Now, when we have LogPoint, it's essentially a clean slate, so there's no point giving you a Sophos dashboard and a Sophos report if you have no Sophos applications. So as soon as you say, yeah, we want the support for Sophos brought in, that's when we keep adding in for more and more reports for you. So although there are only 2 pages here, there are many, many predefined reports for you out there. On the incident side of things, it's also worth noting all the templates that we use for the layout can be completely altered on the reporting side. So you can put your own corporate logo on there. You can change all the how it is laid out. Do you want one big graph, next page one big graph, or do you want to split these into 2 columns, and the colors, etc. can all be changed. So incidents that we have on the network, we can start looking at via the incidents tab. So it's things such as a login attempt on a disabled account being brought to our attention. We can also see things like the, failed a login attempt using a default account, or anything else such as Windows data copied to a removable drive. Maybe as if we want to set that up, constantly monitoring maybe a network path to some critical information or sensitive information, we can keep that going. So what we decide to do with this is up to us. We can actually jump and view the data. We can see, right, okay, it was this that enabled that incident to pop up, and we can start investigating from there. So just cuts down the investigation time a lot more because we can see what's happening from here. Alternatively, we can just say, yep, we've dealt with that. We can mark it as resolved, reopen it, close, or we can actually start commenting on it and saying, you know, that you're investigating or anything like that. And that can stop you from multiple people looking at this, or maybe if you want to pick up the with the investigation at a later date. We can also start filtering down critical or high, medium, low risks. We can do some resolving or anything like that. And if we just do filter down on the critical, we can start seeing things like we're picking up from Kaspersky, it's detecting a virus outbreak from a specific source. So just to go into a few things on our knowledge-based side of things, so the alerts mainly, how we get alerted to something. So we have some my alert rules in here, once again, all predefined for you. And if we go to the vendor rules, we have even more predefined alerts. As I said, the more that you bring in, so if you start bringing in Palo Altos, etc., there'll be specific alerts designed for those that you're also bringing in. So if you decide, yes, you want to use something, we can just go ahead and say, yep, let's use it. It brings it into the use rules. And then we can start dictating how we're going to be alerted on it. So for example, we have here some WannaCry alerts. We can say, yep, let's set up an alert for that. And then we can start saying, do we want to be emailed? And we have some Ginger templating in here. We can say what information it's going to send back. So instead of a plain old email saying, by the way, there's WannaCry, we can actually say on this address, we've detected some things going on which could be related to WannaCry. We can also see HTTP notifications. I've seen this used in some really cool ways and some really simple ways which are effective. We could do something as, you know, posting this out to a PHPMyAdmin, or we could even do something as simple as having a big white board on the screen. And if something happens which is really needing your attention, we can just send out a post request or something like that to turn the full screen red. I've seen that being done. That's really cool. We can output with syslog as well. So not only are we taking in via syslog, we're also exporting. And we can also do SSH, so we can decide to send it off and run a script on a server or anything like that. So maybe if you haven't seen logs recently from one of your web servers, send an SSH command out to restart the web service. We can do things like that. And of course, SNMP version 2 and 3. Another really cool thing that I'm a big fan of is the search templates. Now, if I just go into this file access one, the idea of a search template is to be a bit like a widget, but we can alter the data into what you actually want to drill down into. So if I just do a blank update, we can see, for example, here, we're just getting everything back, anything to do with card files. But if we just look at it and see the name Thomas there, so let's place the name Thomas in and do another update. We can bring it back, all these widgets specifically for one user. So this is just one example that we use it for. It could be many things. So you could be looking at the Windows logs as well as firewall logs, as well as any of your web server logs or anything like that. And with one search of popping in the name Thomas, you can bring back what files they've been accessing the most, what they've done with them, you know, what are their logon times and the logon thresholds, etc., and the time charts. And of course, we can start looking at top searches on Google, etc. We can bring it back all for one. So if we ever have maybe it's a HR request to investigate a user with one search, we can just bring all this information back and send it on to HR. So just to mention at the end demo, we have LogPoint free. So we can see that we can get the full functionality of LogPoint. It's a 90-day initial license, and we have up to 10 nodes and 350 events per second. Now, it's worth noting on our licensing model, we do not care about the events per second. All we count on is per node. So if you were to all of a sudden come under attack and your firewalls light up like a Christmas tree, we're not going to lock you out and say, by the way, you've went over your events per second threshold. We're just going to say, yeah, keep using it. We don't care about the amount of data stored or the events per second. With LogPoint Free, you get full access to the community and help center, and you also get free access to our support team. So it would be as if you bought LogPoint. It's just a case of you have that limit on 350 events per second. If we were to look at LogPoint in a summary, we are the Gartner Peer Insight Customer Choice. We won the award for that. We have also an incredibly fast implementation within a week for a standard implementation. We have heavily customer-centered pricing models. As I mentioned, it's very fair to the customer side. We're just looking for the amount of nodes that are on the network that are sending logs to LogPoint. We're not going to start saying, yeah, well, you've went over that APS limit. We have an ambitious KB team that are developing for our roadmap. So machine learning, for example, is one of the big ones, as it is states underneath the industry recognized UABA engine. That was brought in within a short period of time where we thought, yeah, this is going to be very valuable to the product and our customers. We're a preferred partner for many worldwide MSSPs, so we have some great people that have decided to use LogPoint on the back end and are providing threat analytics to customers, etc. And of course, we are EAL 3+ certified. Just as a side note as well, so as I mentioned, I've quickly skimmed over the top of things such as LogPoint UABA. There's going to be a dedicated webinar for that coming up on the 28th, as well as, I believe, if my Google translation is good enough, we have Trust is Good, Monitoring is Better by the Germans. And also we have some introduction to the LogPoint Director, another overview, and of course, how LogPoint could help you with GDPR. So just with that, I think we'll go to any questions. So does anyone have any questions? Now is the time to ask.